Hello everyone, I'm Tim from Tim's PC, and I build custom PCs to suit anyone's needs or budget. I also live stream my builds and repairs for transparency and educational purposes. So if you would like to get an awesome new PC and you'd like to see it get put together live, send me a message today. Alright, so tonight we're going to be building Katelyn and Chris's PC. So Katelyn is actually a sister of one of my friends that I used to work with back in my Coles days. So it goes back a little way, but yeah, she hit me up for a computer. She was after something in the 4000X case. So yeah, we got a 4000X build on tonight. So we got Nick there. Hey Nick, how you going? What's going on? Yeah, good mate, good. So yeah, this will be a good build here tonight. So we'll go through the components here quickly. So we've got ourselves the Ryzen 5600G for our CPU. We've got an MSI P550 Pro VDH Wi-Fi motherboard. We've got 16 gigabytes of Corsair Vengeance Pro RGB RAM. We have an MSI Gaming X RTX 3060 OC edition, I believe. I believe it's the OC edition. No, just the Gaming X. Maybe I'm getting confused between them and Gigabyte and the terminology. I think I am. That's not very good, is it? So we've got for our storage a Crucial P1 500GB NVMe SSD, and we've also got just slightly off screen down there a Western Digital 1TB green SSD. So we've also got a 750 watt Master Watt Cooler Master power supply, 80 plus bronze with the 5-year warranty. So we're going to be able to upgrade this rig in the future. So be able to add a more powerful graphics card with that power supply there, and it will last the distance having the 5-year warranty. So we've got Dan here. Hey Dan, how you going? No, well, yeah, yep. It's all Corsair for everything except for our power supply. They want quite a lot for their power supplies. Yeah, I mean, you pay for the brand, right? But when I shop for power supplies, I look for like the capacities and like the warranty primarily. So, and then like after those two factors, then I look at the efficiency rating. So efficiency rating's third on my tier of priorities. Nice one. Okay, I don't blame you on a Christmas tree myself. Very nice. And finally, we have our Corsair iQ H115i Elite Capilex cooler. So this is a 280 millimeter.
Okay.
I think I need to have a drink.
Yeah.
That's why I got this bottle of water in advance. For when I start talking and I start losing my voice. I'm actually feeling a bit under the weather because I had my second COVID vaccine tonight. Or not tonight, last night. So, yeah, today I feel like I've been hit by a bus, to be honest. Been sleeping all day and all that, so yeah, we'll try and get through tonight. Alright, so as I said, we've got the Corsair 4000X case here. So let's get started. So I'm going to get the graphics card out of the way for now, because it's the last thing we're going to be installing here. Santa is real. Alright, so let's have a look at this motherboard. So many of my regular viewers have seen this motherboard a few times before, I dare say, because it's one of the most popular motherboards that we feature here, just due to the price and features on the board, essentially. Yeah. Yeah, it's the first one was fine. I didn't notice anything from that, but then the second one, I was like, I feel like I've been hit by a bus today, and Christine was exactly the same. So we put it down to the fact that we had the second shot yesterday, and yeah, it knocked us around a little bit. So I guess that's to be expected with vaccines and stuff like that. Christine was saying she had the cervical cancer one in high school, and that made her sick. She was vomiting and stuff after that. So it's not uncommon. All right, so let's have a look at this motherboard here. So we've got 8 pins of CPU power. We've got some bit of a heat sink there on our MOSFET and VRM. We've got obviously our AM4 socket there, our CPU fan header there, dual channel memory, so 4 slots, 2 channels. We've got a sneaky 5-volt RGB header right there, and we have another fan header up here, as well as another one over here, and then over just above our power connector there, we've got 4 little LEDs that come on. That will show you if your computer's not turning on and booting up properly, one of these lights will come on. It will sort of point you in the right direction as to where the problem might be. Anyway, this one here is obviously our main power for the motherboard. We've got another fan header, got a USB-C front panel connection on this board, so really important because we've got USB-C on this case. We've got 4 SATA ports there in the horizontal position, as well as a USB 3 in the horizontal position, which I really like. We've got another 5-volt RGB header down here. We have an independent LED switch, so if you feel like just turning all the RGB off with one switch, you can just do that. We've got our front panel connections, our diagnostic speaker header, 2 USB 2s, got a COM port and various debug pins, another fan header, 2 12-volt RGBs, and our front panel audio connection there for our speaker and microphone jack on the case. And you'll see these little gold capacitors here. These are the audio capacitors, and all the stuff around here is related to the audio. And then that's why you'll find the audio jacks as close as possible to all that other audio stuff on the board there. And the reason is because digital audio is obviously an electrical signal and subject to electromagnetic interference and other things on the board. So it is a standard design that you always find the audio down this part of the motherboard. You always find the audio outputs on the rear I/O as close as possible to all of that audio hardware. We've got our Wi-Fi 6 Bluetooth 5.1, I believe. Or actually, no, I think this is actually Wi-Fi 5 and Bluetooth 4 on this board. We have gigabit Ethernet, 4 USB 3.0s, 2 USB 2.0s, PS2 port, and we won't be using any of these display outputs here because we've got a graphics card. So our CPU does actually have onboard graphics, so you could use these. However, you won't be getting the performance from your graphics card. However, if you wanted to run an extra screen while you were gaming and you didn't want the performance impact on your graphics card, you could run a single display out from one of these ports, and that would be done by the CPU and wouldn't impact your graphics card. Alrighty, and then all this stuff in the middle here. So we've got 2 M2 slots, which is really good to see. We've got our PCIe X16 slot there. We've got our trusted platform module header here. This is where the little security chip for Windows 11 goes. And obviously down here we have 2 little X1 slots there. So it's probably the only thing that this board is missing is an X16 length port that's probably X4, just so you could plug in like a 4K capture card or something like that if you wanted to. But in general, this board ticks a lot of boxes for the price that it is in terms of the features on the board, and yeah. So that is all the main features here on the motherboard, the MSI B550M Pro VDH Wi-Fi. Alright, so we'll close that up for now. We do get some other goodies in the box there, including an interactive CD-ROM that goes straight in the bin, obviously, because it's 2021. Alright, so I had a knife around here. Alright, so we're not going to be using the stock cooler on this CPU, because we have our 280mm all-in-one liquid cooler up here. So put that down there, and we can go and install our 5600G. So basically right now, 5600G gives you about 93% of the performance of a 5600X and is currently $100 cheaper. So, or roughly 25% cheaper. So you've probably seen me use 5600G in a few builds with graphics cards, as well as a few without graphics cards, and that is the reason. It's about price. So the average person is definitely not going to notice a difference between running a 5600X and a 5600G, unless they're sitting there running benchmarks all the time and actually like looking at numbers. So our memory here, so some Corsair Vengeance, keeping with the Corsair theme here tonight. So these are two 8GB sticks of 3200 MHz CL16 memory. And so we'll install one in channel A and we'll put one in channel B. And the reason why we do that is because the CPU can talk to both channels at the same time. So there is a latency and performance increase. Sorry, latency decrease and performance increase, I should say, when you have memory running in dual channel mode. So, what's wrong, babe?
Really tired.
It's alright. So here's our NVMe SSD. So we're going to put this in the bottom slot here, and so then Katelyn and Chris can install another M2 NVMe drive easily without taking the graphics card out. So alright. So they just slot in like that, and just a little tiny screw. And by the way, if you live in the Brisbane area and like, you know, you're missing an M2 screw or something like that, you can call in here and hit me up. I'll give you one for free. So little things like that, because I've got lots of spare parts. You know, other places do that sort of thing for customers as well. So if you are short on that M2 bolt, you don't have the right size screw for it, yeah, just hit me up. I've got plenty of them. I've got plenty of spares. It's just the way it goes. So they give you, like with each motherboard, they give you a few spares. So I usually go in and screw all the screws into the offsets on the motherboard, so the customer's ready to install a new drive. But then I still end up with like 3 from every motherboard box. So it's kind of pointless. So they just end up piling up and stuff like that. So alrighty. So we're gonna go for our cooler now. Let me get that on the board. So our Corsair coolers here, they come with pre-applied thermal compound. So just an FYI. Had a few people, I had someone once when I was doing one of these coolers on the live stream, they were like, you didn't put thermal compound down, and they were like freaking out about it, and I was like, yeah, that's because, you know, it's pre-applied. Unless I wanted to get the isopropyl alcohol out and clean off the pre-applied stuff and reapply other stuff. But yeah, it's not going to make a massive difference. Alright, 2 big 140s there. Here's our radiator and pump block. And here's our hardware and a controller. Okay. Yeah, so we'll take advantage of that controller there. That will come in handy. And we need our AM4 bracket here. I really don't like these Corsair brackets. I find they're like very very fiddly to install. It's got to be perfectly lined up. So let's put on the different base plate, I reckon. Just so it's a bit brighter in the case there. What size have we got? Oh. This has got those hex-shaped screws. And which way do we want to put this plate on? Because when you put these plates on, you obviously can change the direction that the cables are going to run out of. So I'll probably run it like this, to be honest. I don't like running it with the cables that way because the pipes usually sit on top of the graphics card. So we'll probably mount it in that direction there. Still want to screw the bolts in maybe before I put that piece back. Sweet, this will look good. Excellent. Alrighty, so as you can see, thermal compound is on the bottom of the cooler. But we need to change this over to AM4. And so these pieces just slide out. And then the AM4 pieces just slide in its place. Once we've done that, let's just put that like that. We just need 2 of these bolts. 2? Yeah. Hey Cody, how you going? Sorry, Kobe. Sorry, I was trying to read that. I was like, I'm gonna fuck this up. But I still fucked it up. I'm sorry, man. I don't mean any disrespect. Okay. don't do these bolts on these Corsair coolers down really evenly, it will normally come apart. That looks good. And that looks good. Yeah. Ah, awesome, man. Alrighty. So we'll put our fans on here in the exhaust position. So one good thing about Corsair coolers is that they give you enough bolts if you want to do a push-pull configuration on your cooler, and that is where you've got fans on both sides of the radiator. It's not overly popular in general because people try to minimize noise and stuff like that. But yeah, it's definitely something popular among enthusiasts, and that's why Corsair include the extra bolts basically. Just gives enthusiasts another reason to go the Corsair one. Yeah. Yeah, so we're going to have three 120s blowing in cool air from the front. It's going to be drawing in the cool air from the front, blowing it directly over the graphics card and the motherboard. And then we're going to have two 140s on the radiator and one 120 on the back. So that's not completely balanced in terms of airflow, but the thing is, with these 140s, the 140s are pushing out through a radiator, so the radiator kind of constricts the flow of air a little bit. So having a 140, one 120 at the back and three 120s at the front is actually a pretty good configuration. It's pretty balanced. And a very similar configuration would be having a 360mm radiator, so three 120mm fans on it, one 120 at the back, the radiator exhausting, and then the three on the front drawing cool air in, because having that 360mm radiator pretty much constricts the flow of air for at least one fan, so it sort of offsets. Because yeah, obviously, like for optimal cooling, you want the volume of air being sucked in to equal the volume of air being sucked out. You don't want like a discrepancy there, if not you end up with like positive and negative pressure. Some people like to run with like a slight positive pressure because they reckon it keeps dust out. I don't really worry about that. I try for balanced airflow, and then I just advise people to clean the dusty computer every 3 months. It's not that big a deal. So, alrighty, so we've got our cooler ready to go on the motherboard here. So we've got the cables around the back, so we're going to see this at the front, at the top, then we won't see any of these cables out the back. And so we also had, here it is. So we've got a Corsair RGB controller and fan hub here, I believe. I believe it's RGB and fan on this one. Yep, RGB and fan. So we're probably not going to need the RGB ones because we actually get a pre-installed RGB controller on here. Actually, we're going to need it for, we will have one fan that we need it for, just for that back fan that's going on the case. So, but that's handy as well because we're gonna have a total of 6 fans, and we can just plug all 6 fans into this Corsair controller, and then the pump will be powered. Oh yeah, that's just got the, that's not a, this cable here is just to adjust the speed. So we'll plug this one into the pump fan header, which is this top one here. That's designated as pump. We'll also make sure that the all the fan headers and stuff on the board are set for pulse width modulation and all that. We'll make sure the pump is on DC mode, and we'll save all that into the BIOS because we don't want our pump going up and down in RPM. We want that to stay pretty much running at like full speed because that's usually the optimum sort of speed for a pump to run at. Pumps, like, in cars, for example, like if you drive a car like really low RPM, it starts to like shake and vibrate and stuff, and then once you put your foot down a bit and the revs pick up, it becomes nice and smooth. Well, that's, I can't think of the actual term for it. It's got to do with like the resonance, essentially, of the parts. So you end up with periods, like you end up with speeds where it will vibrate, and then there's like an optimal zone, and usually there's like a couple of places in terms of pump speed that might be ideal for that. But in general, you just set your pump to run at full speed all the time. You don't want it going up and down in speed. It's generally going to add, even though you might think, oh, it'll make my pump last longer, it does the opposite. It makes your pump last less long because it's not just running at the optimum speed the whole time and not vibrating. Instead, it's vibrating around, and whenever you've got stuff with moving parts and excessive vibrations, it's just a matter of time before things come apart, whether it's a bolt or whatever. Like, vibrations kill things. So yeah, you'll see me a lot in my builds where possible. I do try to power pumps, certainly some of the AIOs, just based on the design. I like to power them like with a DC cable that plugs into the power supply's Molex cable, and then I don't have to worry about something happening and the customer resetting BIOS or something like that. I just know that pump's just going to run at its rated speed, how it was intended to run constantly, and it will last as long as possible for the customer. So, alrighty, so we've got a bit of this stuff all organised here. We don't need any of this hardware here. This is for other sockets, Threadripper and Intel. Get rid of these as well. Okay, so we'll turn our attention now to the case. So 4000X is a beautiful case. Christine's got one on her rig, but she's got the white version. So we are very familiar with this case. Alright, let we don't have to take anything off the front. We can leave that front panel as is. So around here, I'll push it a little bit further forward. So we can see there's this RGB controller here. So we're not gonna need. We might even just leave them there, and then potentially what the customer can do is have the lights on the front there. I mean, we're talking Corsair anyway. Corsair's got excellent software where you can address each individual fan like individually. You can set. You can't. It's not just a case of setting colors on the fans. You can set layers of colors and patterns over each other. So you know, I've got my Corsair fans in my case. I've got the center of them on orange, and I've got the outer ring on blue, and then I've got this I've got this pattern called Raindrop, and basically I can select whatever colors I want for it, and then it applies that pattern.
Have some water.
I'm doing that right now. And so it applies that pattern over the lights. So my computer's kind of under the desk there, so you can't really see it too well, but it looks pretty cool. So Corsair have the best RGB software. So in terms of RGB, Corsair is king. I've played with pretty much all the RGB brands and stuff before. Played with all the software. Yeah, Corsair is the superior one. It's a little bit more complicated to use, but that's just because you can do so much more with it. The only one that sort of comes close to what you can do with Corsair is Asus and their Aura Sync and Aura Creator. That's the closest that anyone's come to matching Corsair. So if you want the best RGB effects and software and stuff like that, you always go to Corsair. So there's this bit of foam under here that you've got to pull out. Now we get an instruction here, and I don't know who's reading that instruction. It's very thick. So we get our standard mounting kit here with the case. I might even just keep that intact and chuck it in a box because I've got a million other things to install here. So I might get this other fan, this Lonely fan for the back. And so this is one of the Corsair ML fans, which are the magnetic levitation ones, so they're ultra quiet. But as you can see, they pretty much look exactly the same as all of our other fans. It's just yeah, it's just the bearings inside. So yeah, the more I talk, the more I cough. That's how it goes. I now understand why every stand-up comedian always has like a glass of water on the table. Like, I get it. I get it now. You keep talking long periods of time like that, your throat gets all dry and raspy, and then you start to cough. I'm just going to put a couple of bolts in here lightly because we'll adjust the height of that rear fan when we mount the radiator. Okay, so got that back fan in. We might turn our attention now to the power supply. So like I was saying, with the 750 watt unit, you can upgrade the graphics card to something more powerful. Like if you know in 6 to 12 months time you're like, oh, I want to buy like some stupid monitor and do all this crazy shit, you can go and get yourself like an RTX 3080 or something like that and put it in here and it's going to run just fine. Yeah, 5-year warranty on this power supply here, so a really good warranty. Remember, in Australia, the price of admission for companies making things like power supplies is a 1-year warranty. Okay, that's the minimum under Australian consumer law that a product like a power supply has to have. So if you see anything above the 1-year warranty, that's how you know that it's actually a good quality unit. Because 1-year warranty doesn't mean anything. It doesn't. It's the price of admission. If you do not meet that and you do not offer that, your product will not be for sale in Australia. Put our PCIe cables for our graphics card. We've got our SATA and Molex cables here, so we're not actually going to need much of this. So we might leave one lot of SATA and Molex cables out. We've got our CPU and motherboard over here. So I'm going to grab a zip tie. I'm just going to tie up these extra cables. And then what we can do is we can just put these cables away down in the 3.5-inch drive tray. Cool. Yep. Just like that. So then they're stashed away. If you ever need them, you ever need more SATA or Molex power, you can plug those extra cables in. And then, as for everything else, we will install both of these PCIe cables. Because I believe this graphics card has an 8-pin connector plus a 6-pin connector for its power. So definitely not short on power delivery. And so with power supplies we can mount them in the up or down position. So in general down is kind of the standard, but it's not, you don't have to do it that way. If you were going to be running your computer like sitting on carpet, that would be one reason why you definitely wouldn't want to be running it face down, because you'll suffocate your power supply like that. It won't like suck the carpet up into it and start a fire. We're very unlikely anyway. But what it will do is, cause you dramas with it overheating and then shutting off. And that can be a scary thing when power supplies overheat and shut off. Not because there's any real risk. The engineers have made it shut off. They've done their job for safety. That thing's not going to just spontaneously combust. But what happens is when the computer turns off and then you go to turn it back on again, and you won't have any power. You won't have any power for a little while. Not until the power supply cools down and drops below a certain temperature. Then the little trigger will go off, and then it will be active again. So people will think that their computer's completely dead when they have a power supply overheat. It could be a fan died in the power supply, or they've had it sitting on carpet when they shouldn't, etc. But it can be a scary prospect because you feel like that the thing is just completely fucked. Won't turn on, won't do anything, it's just gone. And so when you've got like a $3,000 computer, that can be pretty anxiety inducing. Yeah.
Kirby wants to know how much the RTX 3080 costs.
So depends what card you get. So right now they're sort of between 2300 and all the way up to like $3,000 for some of them. So it's still an expensive prospect, but the flip side of it is the fact that a couple of years ago we had the RTX 2080 Ti, which performs roughly like an RTX 3070, right? And people were paying $2,400 for that. So at least now, even though prices are high, at least now people are getting 35% more performance when they spend $2,400 on a graphics card. So I don't think that's completely bad news, to be honest. You're getting 35% more performance out of the graphics card that costs $2,400-ish. That's pretty good. I don't think that's a case of they're rip-off prices or something like that. I think if you sort of look back in time a little bit to what people were paying just a couple of years ago for X level of performance, you'll see that it's not quite as bad as people make out. The thing is that Nvidia's CEO mentioned these ridiculous retail prices, and they never sold for those retail prices. And I still get like the odd person like, do you have graphics cards close to the retail price? And I just sort of roll my eyes a bit, because retail price isn't like a thing, man. It's a recommendation. It's not like set in stone. Retailers can charge whatever the hell they want, and they do. Hey Mick, how you going? Good to have you here. Alright, so we've got our SSD installed there, so realistically all we've got to do now is get our motherboard in case. So we'll have some offsets to screw in here for sure. None in my tray, that's okay. Yeah, that's good, that's good. Just need one more. Sweet as. Okay, so let's get our motherboard in here. So I'm going to need my IO shield, and also grab some of this stuff as well. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So we do have a micro ATX board into an ATX case, which does mean that we have to put a bit of thought into the cable management, keep things clean. Can that just stay there for a second? Okay, that's using the thick bolts. Which case manufacturers could just like get their shit together. Use the one size bolt. Okay. So one thing we want to do before we go any further is we want to get that CPU power cable plugged in before we get that radiator in place. Very good. Yeah.
Okay, sweet. Which one would you recommend? RTX 60 is so much them or
Yeah, so if you step up to 3060 Ti, 3070, 3080, you're going to notice a big performance improvement. Because 3060 Ti is actually 3070 Lite, not like the supercharged version of a 3060, if that makes sense. Basically, 3060 Ti, 3070 and 3070 Ti are all the same GPU, the NVIDIA GA104. Whereas 3060 is a GA106. So that's the fundamental difference there. Alright, I'm gonna plug this back fan into the motherboard's CPU fan header. And plug this pump into the pump header. There we go. And now we've got everything at the top of the motherboard the way that we want it. Oh. Okay. Do you feel like holding the cooler for me, babe?
Really?
Well, you're lots of help, aren't you?
Yes.
Right at the front there. Let me just swap to. Do you know what it's like mounting these?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, hold it there. Yeah, sure, sweet. Yeah.
Okay, this is okay, sweet. Well, I'm going to work some overtime and send you a PM to sort them out. I want to get the latest done now. Thank you, peeps. I really appreciate your help.
All good, man. Sweet as. So now we've got all these cables around the back here to deal with. So because we've got a micro ATX board, we need to run some of these cables behind the motherboard so that it stays nice and neat. Okay. Sweet. And what have we got here? A USB 2. Guess we're going to have to mount this. Double-sided tape. So our front panel audio, that can slide down here. Alrighty, so I don't think we need to plug anything else into the bottom of the motherboard there. That's the 4 that we need to plug in. Everything else we should be right. Happy days. Oop. That's one of the ones I fitted. That has the standard size bolt, and so does this last one. And then one more thick one. Sweet as. It's all coming along. Now we just got all this stuff back here. Might take that extra 2.5-inch SSD tray off. Really, is that not high enough? It's not high enough. Okay. Stick our CPU cable around the side there, get that sort of out of the way. And we can plug our pump into the controller. There we go. Alrighty, so I've got USB 3 and C. I'm going to push them out of the way there for a second. Go, and then we've got with these Corsair controllers, you want to be plugging fans in order, so they've got like number 1, 2, 3, 4. You need to plug them in that order: 1, 2, 3, 4. Plug both of our controllers into the SATA power here. USB 3 there. And we'll plug in a couple of SATA cables. Go. It's got a couple of SATA cables out the back here now. And we've got our USB Type C. Okay, well, believe it or not, we're on to the last part of our build, which is putting in our graphics card. And so we're going to be utilising slots 1 and 2 here. Here's our MSI RTX 3060 Gaming X. Alrighty, here it is. It's chunky. Massive cooler on it. Like I said, it's got the 8-pin connector and 6-pin connector for power. So definitely not short on power delivery there. Look at all these stupid bits of plastic over this. I don't know why they insist on doing that. Okay. There we go. Okay. And then finally, all we've got left to do is plug in our graphics card. So plug in our 8-pin. That's to plug in. Alright, so we'll get these cables here tied down so they're looking nice. So with these glass side panel cases with all the RGB lighting, we can't leave the cables looking like shit. Very good. So that's looking like a rig. So now's the time for the moment of truth to see whether I've made a mistake or we've got any faulty parts. I don't think I made a mistake. It does happen, but I'm not infallible. Okay. And we'll get Windows installation USB, and we'll get a power cable. Alright, power switch is on. Let's press the power button. She's looking alive. now we just need to wait and see if we get a post. Here we go. Alrighty. So I'm going to grab my SSD because straight up we're going to do a BIOS update on it. So we're going to go into M-Flash. So it is kind of risky to do a BIOS update on your own if you don't have an uninterruptible power supply. So, because if you have a blackout or anything like that, it will brick your motherboard. It won't do anything anymore because the BIOS is the core firmware. So if anything stuffs up with that, your motherboard won't work anymore. And manually reflashing a BIOS chip is not like, yeah. Alrighty. So updating from version 2.6 to 2.91. And so yeah, the only thing we haven't plugged in is our 1 terabyte SSD. And that's because of a quirk of the Windows 10 installation program, and we don't want a SATA drive plugged in while we're installing onto an NVMe SSD, because the reason is it's a technical reason. So Windows installer will always put a thing called Windows Boot Manager onto what it calls drive 0. Drive 0 will always be the first SATA device. It will always be, just based on how Windows is written, it's drive 0, the SATA devices, before the NVMe SSDs. So what you want to do is start your install, because you don't want Windows Boot Manager on another drive, because then if you remove that drive, you won't be able to boot into your computer anymore. So it's a small thing, but yeah, makes a bit of a difference. Yeah, she's looking really nice. If you're finding it's a bit dark and you want to add a bit more light to it, I've got 2 packs of RGB strips that are $35 each. So if you want to add a few extra RGB strips in like discrete places that will sort of add a bit more glow to it, we can totally do that, because that's probably one of the downsides with like black RGB builds, is the fact that black doesn't really reflect light very well, so they end up kind of dark. Whereas that's one of the reasons why people love the white so much, because it's so bright, reflects all the light. And so that fan can stay exactly where it's sitting. That looks fine there. Oh, it's nearly done. And now that's all up to date, which is good. Alrighty. So now it's got to post for the first time again, because whenever you do a BIOS update, it resets everything to factory. So when you turn a computer on for the first time, like the motherboard chipset sort of like calls out, goes, "Yo homies, everyone call in and tell me where you're at, what you're doing, who you are." And so it identifies all the devices and it saves the configuration. Okay, we'll do Windows install now. I was a bit slow with the key there. Alrighty. So I'm just going to cover this up while I enter the key, so no sneaky bastard steals the product key info. Okay. Yes, I accept the license conditions. Alright, so there we've got drive 0, so that's our NVMe SSD, and this other one here is my my SSD that I plugged in at the back. So we are going to install onto our NVMe SSD here. And now that this process has started, we can actually go ahead and plug in our SATA SSD. And we can also go ahead and close our back panel. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to quickly go into BIOS here. I'm going to activate the XMP profile on our memory, and I'm going to go over and make sure everything is doing what I want it to do. PWM, smart fan mode, pump, DC, and we'll move all these other ones to PWM. We don't have anything plugged in, but if Katelyn or Chris want to add extra fans or do anything crazy, at least I don't have to think about it. So PWM is pulse width modulation, which basically means that it can output different voltages to the fans, making them spin slower and faster. So they don't just run at the one speed, they can run at variable speeds. Alright. Yep, so pump is power pulse width modulation back to DC, which is what we want. And so now our memory's running at full speed, our fans are configured, and everything is looking good. So this won't take too long. Thankfully, it's not like installing, you know, like Windows XP or something like that you know, took a bit of time. Also, we're on hard drives and inefficient CPUs and all that. Now it doesn't take long at all. Okay. So let's get all this set up. Australia. We use the US keyboard layout because of the $sign. I don't have internet, I'm a peasant. Okay, now we can plug in some internet. So now I can have access to the internet. Alright, here it goes. Alright, let's clean up this taskbar a bit. Alrighty, got some updates. It won't take too long to download. Yep, sweet. It's a good thing about gigabit internet, it downloads everything really fast. Alright, let's get R23 for our stress test. And we'll also get Dragon Center because we have an MSI motherboard. We've also got an MSI graphics card. Yay, go MSI. That looks like a graphics card driver's gone and downloaded and installed. That's good. So we're going to run as administrator here. Let me get all these Windows apps here updated. Alright, so we'll get reset my SSD. There we are. Put down some custom desktop icons so we can keep everything nice and organized. Acronis for WD. Get that installed. Got Ryzen Master there. Okay, with Chrome. Okay, what have we got here? It's done. GeForce Experience, hardware monitor, and we want IQ version 4.12. There's GeForce Experience. No. MSI Afterburner. She's decided to destabilize on me. Okay. Okay. So we were up to MSI Afterburner. I don't think that's installed properly. Alrighty. Okay. So there's our CPU, 6 cores, 12 threads, our memory running at 3200 megahertz, and our graphics card. So let's turn off these things that start up automatically, because we don't need everything starting all at once. Cortana disabled, Dragon Center can stay, IQ can stay, OneDrive can stay, Origin shut that down, Steam shut that down. Sure, we can decide what we want to play when we open the computer. Okay, let's unplug my SSD and let's set up the other 1 terabyte SSD in this computer. Use Windows Disk Management utility. And we're going to create a new simple volume, D drive. And call it storage SSD, and we're going to finish that off. Alright, there's our SSD, ready to use. Let's adjust the date and time. Sync that. Alright, let's give it another reboot. And that should be it. We can see what it does now. Alrighty. We should be all up to date and looking good. Oh, yep. 365's installed. Yep, that's all looking pretty good. Oh wait, we have Horizon Master. I've got to install that app. Okay, let's set up momentum caching for our SSD, which is where we basically program the system memory to speed up the SSD so we get even faster speeds. So that's pretty much it. We'll just we'll run the benchmarks and we'll do the stress test, and she'll be all ready for these guys to pick up tomorrow. We live on the same street. Okay. So let's open up hardware monitor. Ooh.
Dinner's ready, guys.
There we go. So Ryzen 5600G, our MSI B550 Pro VDH Wi-Fi, memory, our graphics card. Yeah, we can run a quick bench test on it. Alrighty. So there's our 5600G at 606 there, and we can see there our 5600X, just a tiny fraction above it, but that's a negligible difference there. Multi-thread, similar story, very small little difference there, not something that is going to be a big deal for most people. We've got our storage drives. So there's our 1TB SSD being powered on twice. There's our NVMe SSD powered on 3 times. And so we can test the speeds of our SSDs. So we'll let that one run, and then we might set up MSI Afterburner so we can run the benchmarks. Oop, what's going on here? We'll just edit this fan curve slightly. All right. Alrighty, and there's our NVMe SSD speeds there, nice and fast. And to show you how much faster it is than the SATA SSD, we can run the same thing on the D drive. And we might run Heaven now in the out of the box settings. And so this value here below RAM is how many frames per second it's currently running at. download the same benchmarks and run them on the same settings I'm running them on, and you'll be able to make a direct comparison. Valley. So I run this one on Ultra, Max Anti-Aliasing. And there's our SATA SSD speeds. So as you can see, nowhere near as fast as the NVMe. And so this one here is the 4K benchmark. Alrighty. So that was superposition at 4K. Let's go with hardware monitor. Let's do a fresh install of that. Oh, wrong one. Interesting. So, what would be the cause of that? Confliction, I think. No? Okay, let's give that a quick reboot. That's pretty weird that hardware monitor's not opening up and playing nicely for us. That is interesting. Is it like a new version out or something? Possibly. No, that's version 1.44. Okay. If we can't use hardware monitor, we'll use okay. So now let's move on to the final part of the night, which is the stress test. All right. Okay. So we're stressing the graphics card there, and we will start on the CPU. So we've got 12 blue boxes in Cinebench. We've got the 12 threads of our CPU here in Task Manager. So that's what the CPU is working on. It's nice that they're both blue boxes, so you can make the connection if you're just casually learning this stuff from experience. So our memory and our graphics cards being stressed as well. And so now all we do is we just let this run and we just observe the temperatures. So I'm not seeing any issues here from how it's running. I'd say this is going to pass with flying colours. So yeah, that's pretty much the end of the night, people. So I'll just hang around for a couple more minutes like usual, just in case anyone has any final questions before I sign off. Alrighty. Well, I think that's the end of the night, people, so it gets pretty boring from this stage onwards because all we do is let this run for 90 minutes while we track the temperatures. Which we're doing here with IQ. And we can also see the graph trend here for our graphics card. So as we can see, it's barely getting warm at all, sitting at 52 degrees. So you get a lot more out of this graphics card. Graphics cards can go up to about 80 degrees, so there's plenty of temperature headroom there. And then for our CPU there, that has a maximum temperature of 95 degrees. And it's running 75 under load. And this is an extreme load that we're doing here. This is like rendering a video or something, doing something really, really CPU intensive. So that's what we're doing here. So what we're seeing for our CPU temperatures, we're never going to see that like while we're playing a game or something like that. That will be the sort of temperatures that we see when when we're trying to render a video or something like that, doing something really intensive. Alrighty, well, I think that's it. So thanks everyone for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow in the next video.